Hello and welcome back to Aetheral Space 8.24, red and orange in all the world. We are back.
Hello. Hell yeah. Hello, Tanhony. I'm going to guess that title means we're going to get something with John Blair and his Panacea Demon. Last time on Aetheral Space, Dragon and Muzazi had a heart-to-heart, and then is that also when they made their plan, or what else happened in 8.23?
Well, they had the plan last chapter before that. Then they were all getting into position, basically.
Yes.
He's directing things from the control centre. Dragon and Muzazi are in the garage. Skipper, Ruth, and Bruno are heading out to actually, just sever the cord that's controlling the creature. But then all the power went off.
Alright, let's do it. Dragon coughed as smoke poured through the garage, the aftermath of a mighty explosion. He was about to fall to his knees, but Muzazi seized him by the back of the collar, pulling him back to his feet. That single blow of light and fury had cracked the garage doors open, the warped metal allowing harsh sunlight to infiltrate the space. A few seconds before the explosion, the power had gone off, and so that unwelcome light was the only illumination they were offered. "What happened?" Muzazi wheezed, covering his mouth. His sharp eyes were focused directly on the entrance. "Some kind of EMP?" Dragon ventured, filing through the possibilities in his archive. "Knock out the power to cut us off from each other, then begin the attack?" It made sense. It was a little more technical than you'd expect from an evil mushroom, but... "Something coming, dead boy," Pen whispered. She was stood by one of the now-dead sentry guns, a worried look on her face. "Something coming." A shadow rose through the sunlight, like a monster under the waves of the ocean. Glowing red eyes peeled through the dark. It stepped forward on massive feet, each footfall a resounding thump. "What makes a god a god?" John Blair had changed since the last time Dragon had seen him. He was taller, for one, nearly 8 feet, with grotesquely engorged musculature, such that he looked like he could strangle someone with a finger. His blonde hair had been bleached to a shock of white, crimson aether coursing through it as it billowed in the wind. Angry red veins, as thick as electric cables, ran across his bare chest. His eyes shone like twin stars, scarlet malevolence pouring over every person in the room. A plate of bone growing out of his jaw covered his mouth. He held his hand up and flexed his fingers, as if still getting used to his new form. Those red lights turned to look directly at Dragon. "I'll show you," he continued, voice a demonic rumble. "Right here, right now." There was a moment of fool's tranquility, a few seconds before violence erupted. A toy Muzazi drew his blade from his sheath. Dragon Hadrian let his pistols fall into his hands from his holsters. The gathered fighters, plasma rifles still in their hands, aimed them at the intruder. Someone gulped. With a storm of red aether, Blair bounded forwards, arm pulled back to reduce Dragon to a smear with a single mighty blow. The rain of plasma fire missed him completely, the burning deluge falling onto the spot he'd just been standing. Dragon and Muzazi acted at the same time. Gemini World! Dragon vanished into his aether, the only trace of him being a few stray sparks snuffed out by Blair's fist. The attack struck the ground where Dragon had just been standing, shattering the concrete and forming a crater from the sheer impact. Muzazi slashed at the exposed arm with his sword as it came down, slicing between two of the fingers and splitting the limb lengthwise. As he pulled his blade free with a thruster-assisted tug, he leapt to the side of his enemy, attempting to get into his blind spot. Through his observation, Dragon watched as another tendril of red aether appeared behind Blair, coalescing into a massive construct. A mixture between a clock and a coat of arms, with 4 emblems arranged around it. Blue eye, cogitant. Golden eye, pugnant. Black eye, umbrant. Melting eye. By means of elimination, neither crownless or scurrant. The hand of the clock hovered over the blue eye. As Muzazi moved, Blair responded in a flash, swinging his body around as he unleashed a devastating roundhouse kick. It was fast, monstrously fast, and the thrusters that sparked across Muzazi's body only allowed him to dodge it by a single hair. Some of the rubble catapulted by the kick, smashed into the opposite wall with a sound like a bomb going off. Gemini World! As Blair's foot came back down, Dragon appeared in the air above him, posed like he was diving into a lake, his pistols extended in front of his gaze. As he fell, he fired, the first few plasma shots slamming into the top of Blair's skull. As his head snapped up, Dragon could see that he had already done his damage. Parts of his crown had begun to melt and crumble, one of Blair's eyes jiggling in place as the foundations of the socket weakened. Dragon continued to fall, continued to fire, and as he did, Musashi slashed his sword at Blair's legs. The blade penetrated, but not far enough, lodging in the middle of Blair's log-like thigh. The repurposed didn't even look at the source of the injury. His eyes were still fixed on Dragon, after all. He spread his hands wide, ready to smash Dragon's head between them the moment he came into view. Dragon did not falter. He continued to fire, shots scorching and melting, for every second that he could. The hands came together, so fast they were little more than blurs. Gemini World! An instant of pain before he vanished. He'd misjudged the timing. When he decided to reappear, he would be injured. Pain would heal him before long, of course, but there'd still be a time when he'd be vulnerable. As quietly as he could, Dragon manifested himself behind a fallen shell of a truck, doing his best to keep himself out of sight. His arm had been crushed by that attack, bone breaking through the skin around the elbow and protruding grotesquely. Dragon bit down in his good hand to suppress the screaming as panacea pooled out from the wounded tissue, coating his injury and beginning to make the necessary repairs. The damaged arm sloughed away with a curious lack of pain, and the replacement began to grow. "Hurry," he urged the mushrooms. "Hurry, dead boy," they answered with a mutter. As his arm grew back, Dragon peeked out of cover. He couldn't imagine Blair was just sitting there waiting while Dragon made a run for it, and in this case he was right. Musashi was fighting admirably. At first, his sword was still lodged in Blair's leg, but with a flash of thruster fire, the weapon completed its path, severing the limb and sending it flying off into the distance. Blair fell forward, landing on his hands and remaining knee, reduced to an organic tripod by Musashi's assault. The special officer thrust his sword forwards to capitalize on the opening, aiming right for Blair's still-cracked forehead. No doubt he aimed to destroy Blair's brain and put him out of commission for quite a while. But he had overcommitted. The clock behind Blair switched from cogitant to pugnant. The already absurd muscles of Blair's body swelled, and he swung one of his massive arms towards the incoming enemy with a roar of animalistic fury. Musashi dodged backwards flawlessly, of course, but the air pressure of the swing was like a solid object all by itself, and it slammed into him with all the grace of a speeding car.
Nanomachine, son!
Just like, it's the revenge from Arc 1, the car strikes back. He went flying backwards, smashing through the makeshift barricades. By the time Matoy Musashi had landed in a heap, John Blair's severed leg had already grown back. As had Dragon Hadrian's arm. No rest for the wicked. Dragon leapt out of cover, charging straight towards Blair. As he ran, he scooped up gravel with his hands, tossing it ahead of himself and absorbing it into Gemini's shotgun. 67 shots in total, but they'd be weak enough that he'd go through them quickly. Just to clarify, when he does that, he's only slightly powering them up from when they were tossed, right? So when he does this, they're going to be relatively weak projectiles?
Yeah, they get faster when he shoots them back out, but if they're not going fast in the first place, it's limited.
Right. I thought so, I just wanted to check. And he can do multiple now at once?
Yeah, he can rapid fire.
Nice. The clock behind Blair switched from pugnant to umbrant, and the growling from his throat was silenced like a muted videograph. As Blair swung around to intercept the incoming enemy, Dragon fired a volley of shots directly at his face. Streaks of blue, like shooting stars, slammed into Blair's eyes, hollowing out the front of his face and blinding him for a moment. Not to be deterred, the massive man stepped forward and unleashed a blind punch in Dragon's direction. Unguided as it was, it would have been more than enough to send Dragon's head flying off. Within a split second, Dragon's field of view was consumed utterly by the massive incoming knuckles. No time to dodge. Gemini World! Gemini World! It was the work of a moment, an execution of the technique that looked more like teleportation than anything. The punch missed Dragon by inches, and as he continued to run along the length of his arm, he pelted the limb with the remainder of his Gemini shotgun. The meat was pulped and filleted, the bone cracked and snapped, and finally the arm was torn free of the body. Dragon leapt through the opening that provided, avoiding a swing of the bone stump, and fired his pistol downwards, incinerating some of Blair's toes. If John Blair still felt pain, he showed no signs of it. His eyes remained unburdened, his mouth remained a flat line, and as he brought his good foot down towards Dragon's head in a devastating stomp, he made not a sound. I'm wondering, do you like the remain there because of the iteration of it, or do you think it would be better if you replaced the second one? Because I'm not sure.
What do you mean?
So his eyes remained unburdened, his mouth remained a flat line. Do you think it's better that way because of the repetition, or do you think it'd be better to change one? Okay, cool. Using Gemini World so many times in such quick succession wasn't a good idea. Sooner or later, the mental fatigue would lead him to make a mistake. If he wasn't careful, he could reappear missing a limb or even some organs. And he's also using up a lot of Aether like this, right? Why is that so bad, dead boy? Pan asked. Huh? Dragon caught the foot as it came down, Aether coursing through his arms to stop them from snapping under the immense pressure. Even so, his knees buckled under the weight, his hands shaking as his physical strength was pushed to its utter limits. He didn't have the strength to push the leg away and move without being crushed. He didn't have the strength to hold it up forever. He couldn't. At the very edge of his hearing, he could hear Toy Musashi getting to his feet. He could hear plasma raining down on Blair's back, repelled by his Aether defenses. He could hear his own bones creaking, beginning to ever so slightly crack. And then he could hear, "There you are," said a voice like hell. Pan's right, though, right? Like, can't he afford to lose those body parts and then she can regenerate them?
But maybe she means something else. Who knows? Perhaps we'll find out what.
A crimson forest spread out around him, formed from brain matter and nerves and the smoke of wasted blood. In the hollow sky, a black sun hung bleeding. Dragon could not move. He could not move because he lacked a body with which to move. He did not have skin, or arms, or legs. I assume that's legs, not of legs. Or even a beating heart. He had bark and crumbling leaves. He was a tree, his branches tortuously spread out like angry veins. The barest impression, I assume, of a face, protruded from the surface of this form, allowing Dragon to see and breathe. He stared ahead, blue eyes watering, as the crimson coalesced before him. Like smoke trapped in a fist, the scarlet assumed the form of the red girl. White hair fluttered in assumed wind, and a cruel smile playing across her lips. As she walked towards Dragon, the undergrowth slithered away to grant her passage. "This is misguided, my other self," she said, her voice as firm as gravity. "To put your hopes in something like this." Dragon tried to open his mouth to say something, but the only thing that resulted was hacked-up leaves. The red girl chuckled mockingly. She reached out and caressed his cheek with the gentleness of a sullen knife. "If only you'd never existed," she purred, the old words sending a jolt down Dragon's back like lightning. "Such a pest, such an inconvenience, dead boy." Dragon could not speak, but he mouthed the words anyway. "Fuck you." The smile dropped from the girl's face, leaving only burning malice. "You want to kill me, don't you? To hurt me. That's your nature. That's desire to inflict pain right now. That is your truest self. That is why you deserve this." Dragon just glared, and the girl let go of his face. Her glaring eyes burrowed into his soul. "It doesn't matter," she growled. "In a few moments you will be dead, and that will be the end of it." "No," said a voice from behind her. Slowly, with a frown of annoyance on her face, the red girl turned to look at the orange girl, standing on the other side of the clearing. Pan stared at her other self with determination, even as the crimson air pressed against her with crushing force. Her eyes, usually hidden, were bright and clear. "I'm doing this to protect you," the red girl said, with the exasperation of a parent reprimanding a child. "Doesn't matter," Pan said. "If this is protecting, then I don't want it. Stop hurting dead boy. Stop hurting people." The black sun opened a massive red iris, staring down at the land below. Its pupil was focused directly on Pan's defiance. "You'll have to make me," the red girl whispered. Pan nodded. "Okay," she said, spreading her arms wide. "Then I make you. Fucko." The world exploded into orange light. As Dragon came to, still holding up Blair's foot, he found himself gasping for breath. It was like he'd just come up from the bottom of the ocean. Blair flinched, blinking rapidly, and Dragon took the opportunity to push him away with all his strength. The giant staggered backwards, each step cracking the ground. One hand went to his regenerating skull, as if to soothe a headache. "What?" he growled. "Did you do?" Dragon had no answer for that. "Hatred!" cried Musashi, and Dragon turned just in time to see the special officer hurl his shining sword with all his strength. He would never do this to Luminescence. For a split second, as the sword hurtled towards him, Dragon thought the warrior had turned traitor. An attack? No. Gemini's shotgun! The sword vanished just before it would have hit Dragon, then reappeared, flying at a new angle with far superior speed, right towards the recovering Blair. It speared right through his torso, sending him flying across the room and pinning him against the concrete wall. This is how you know Musashi fucks with you, if he lets you Gemini shotgun his sword.
Team attacks.
Dragon. Showtime! Dragon let out a breath he felt he'd been holding in for a long
It's
time.
like, I was generic. I was like, don't cramp my style, okay? Whatever.
And then the second tier of Blair's ring appeared. If Cogitant is so good, why isn't there a Cogitant Part 2? Can't believe it.
Well, there was a Pugnant Part 2.
Oh my god. Yeah, we haven't gotten enough Pugnant representation, to be honest. We had one in Arc 1 who got owned, and then we have Ruth who's half Pugnant. We need more Pugnant swag.
We'll have more, I
space.
promise.
I believe you. Because I feel like lately, like, and someone noticed this too, is like, Orchid was rereading Arc 1 recently because Banker Paul just started reading, and she was like, you don't realize it, but Dragon has fucking changed a lot. And I was like, I think part of that might also be, like, you've changed a lot as a writer. Like, you've continued to address things that I had wanted in the story, and you had, like, branched out more with the direction the story was going. And I feel like, as a whole, Aetheral Space has only gotten better and better as time goes on.
I'm very happy to hear the opposite hasn't happened.
Yeah. you thought it would go downhill after Arc 3?
Yeah.
This
I only planned up to Arc 2. Once they beat the spider, I didn't know what was going on.
Every village just Samael again.
There can only be one Samael. Thank him for his service.
Thank you for your service, Samael and Braziel Zakos. But yeah, that was a good banger of a chapter. It makes me want to read more, but we need to rest for Havoc Moon today. Believe it or not, folks, we've recorded.
This is the most
so
organized we've ever been, I'm pretty sure, in terms of recording.
Yeah, and it all happened because I woke up early and Tan didn't have to work on this specific weekend day.
Yeah, there was no planning that went into this.
Yeah,
we just have our. It's very curious that you mentioned the Pugnant because we have a fun fact about the Aetheral Space World today, as usual. Our lore dropped
tell
up.
me.
So the planet home, previously known in pre-ancient times as Earth, is currently a bombed-out nuclear wasteland, populated mostly by Pugnant tribes.
Really?
Yeah.
And when you say tribes, do you mean like literally like tribal tech as we know it, or is it like tribes in sci-fi terms, which are like modern-day cities?
Well, not necessarily cities, but like villages. They're not like They're not like pre-technology.
Like they have tech, is what you're
Yeah.
saying, but they're not like a space government. They just stay to their planet.
Yeah.
And their land masses.
Because
Very interesting.
Pugnants have some resistance to radiation as well, so that's why they hang out there.
Really? Huh? The inheritors of the Earth. What do you know? Are we gonna get like? I like to think in my headcanon that Earth got fucked up, right? Then it had like a Wall-E level restoration, but then it got fucked up even worse, and everyone just gave up on it. In the time since Aetheral Space, like they had their nuclear fallout, they recovered. They're like, we're gonna do it different this time, and then it ended even worse. And they're like, we're done with home. This planet's cursed. All right. Well, I don't have anything else to say. I guess I think we're ready to wrap this one up. See you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.